Hello and welcome to Culture Illiterate, a podcast where four friends overthink comic book movies. I am one of your hosts and your main character, Jake, and I am now blanking on what I was going to say as my fun fact. Shit. Come back to me.
Don't you...
I'm not kidding. Come back to me. I don't remember what I was going to say.
It's all your fault, Sean.
Oh, I remember now.
This is your fault.
Now.
No, he's got it.
I got it. So my fun fact is that I went to a college that had a very severe mumps outbreak.
Radical.
That's crazy. Imagine going to college. Anyway, Don't
do it, kids.
I'm another host of yours. I'm Jason. Nice to meet you. And,
he's phantasming.
Looks like I'm not the only one
I
to
remember.
forget.
No, I remember. I, as a child, really wanted an easy bake oven, but I was too scared to ever ask for one because they were marketed towards girls.
And now we know you're a little queer.
You know, I always wanted one of those too. Everything they made looked delicious.
Dude, and the girls looked like they had so much fun in it.
Oh, of course.
Shout out, Haley had one. Me and Jason's sister Haley had one. It was very fun.
Did she have one?
Yeah, Haley had one.
She never let me use it?
Good. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's broken now, but yeah,
I'm
shout out
gonna
Haley.
kill her. For legal reasons, that's a joke.
Well, my name's Matt. Hello. And my fun fact, I am changing it on the fly because Jake brought up college and now I'm pissed. My fun fact is graduation is not free, even though you give colleges like tens of thousands of dollars. In fact, you have to pay for your own cap and gown and then pay to attend graduation and then pay to have your diploma. Fuck that.
I don't get, why would you pay to just, sit in a ceremony for hours?
For experience.
No.
And if you can't see it, but I'm doing air quotations right now.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of people just don't want to be left out. The only way I would get, and it's still a rip-off that they do, and it's still fucked up that they do that to you, but I think if it's, the only way it would make any sense to me is if it's, culturally important to your family for you graduating. Yeah. I get that.
I don't care.
I can get it, too, if it's, you're getting, something that's a little bit better than, your bachelor's. If you're getting a doctorate, I'm like, okay, you know what? That kind of makes sense. Not many people do that.
I get paying for it in that scenario, but it's still fucked up that they make you.
Well, no, you shouldn't have to pay for that shit either way.
But either way, you're gonna be a doctor either way, whether you go or not.
This is also true. So, yeah, I'm Sean. I'm another one of our many hosts, and my fun fact is that Jake's previous fun fact is that his favorite Robin is Damian Wayne.
My favorite Robin is?
Robin.
Yeah, that's true. That was my previous fun fact before me and Matt started ranting about college. So I switched it. But true, Damian Wayne is the best Robin. I'll go to bat for that.
Jake, no, I meant to say. John.
No.
Do you also hunt wabbits?
I'm eating wabbit tonight with you boys.
I recommend E.T. We saw E.T. this week. 30th anniversary re-release in IMAX. Good shit. Classic movie.
I had never seen E.T. before until this, and E.T. is so weird.
You're really overselling it. It's not that weird.
It's such a strange movie.
He's so fixated on this one scene where people in astronaut suits just come into the house, and he just won't stop talking about that, even though there's another hour and a half of the movie.
Okay, first of all, that is weird.
But that's a single percentage of the entire film.
I think E.T.'s design is weirder than anything, and it's not even that weird.
It's just weird.
I don't mean this as an insult because it's a masterfully made movie. Steven Spielberg, that guy knows what he's doing, but it's a pretty run-of-the-mill kids movie. It's nothing crazy.
It's not.
What
kids movies were you watching? Literally, the whole time watching that movie, I kept thinking to myself, I can't believe this is as popular as it is. Not because it's bad, but just because I was like, this is so bizarre.
Jason, the way you're describing it, it's as if it was common sense, and yet you are in the very minority of the opinion of E.T.
No, I've had people agree with me. First of all, I'm not alone.
We don't know. They live in Canada. They go to a different school.
No, it's my coworker. You piece of shit.
Well, actually, speaking of E.T., I have another recommendation. Actually, book called My Best Friend's Exorcism. E.T. connects me to that because there is a very sad portion of the book. It's written by Grady Hendrix. It's a really, really wonderful friendship, should be a love story, friendship story, set in the 80s during the Satanic Panic. But there is a section where the two best friends meet as young children because one throws a E.T. themed birthday party because she's obsessed with E.T. and nobody shows up. And I read it on a train and I cried on the train because that type of shit just makes me cry so easy. So please read My Best Friend's Exorcism.
I also have a recommendation. So I'm going to recommend an animated show that's currently on its second season on Adult Swim. I am recommending Gendy. I can't pronounce his last name.
Gendy Tartakovsky.
Tartakovsky, yes. I just keep calling him Gendy because that's what everyone calls him. But yeah, Gendy Tartakovsky's Primal is a fantastic piece of art that is airing on Adult Swim. It is currently on its second season, and it is basically about basically a caveman and a dinosaur who connect who are like basically just coming off of fresh tragedies, and they basically form a bond together and basically travel the land together. And it sounds like a kid show, but it is one of the goriest animated shows I've ever seen, especially on its second season. But it's fantastic. The characters are simple. It's very quiet. It reminds you of Samurai Jack a little bit, especially how like atmospheric it is and how just the world is just so alive and beautiful. Like, you know what I'm talking about, Sean? It seems like you were pretty familiar with this as well.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if I've seen Primal yet. I
You
feel
haven't?
I feel like I saw the first season, but it was like ages ago, and I can't remember anything about it. And it's something I need to go back and watch.
Because we nerded out so much on Samurai Jack season 5 that I assumed that you would have seen this by now.
I can throw in the recommendation of Samurai Jack because, I love it.
I know. Season 5 ended a long time ago, but it's still a classic, so please watch it.
Fuck you, bitches! I just thought of another rec.
Please go ahead.
I have a rec.
I'll let Jason go first. They haven't said
Who
anything.
cares about Jason?
Fuck you, Matt. I want to recommend, I mean, he's a pretty popular artist, but the rapper J.I.D. He's been getting more popular lately, which makes me happy to see, because I think he's one of the best rappers that is alive right now. Recently he's been getting more popular. He has like 21 million monthly listeners on Spotify, but like when I started listening to him, he had way less than that. I've been a fan of him for a while. So this is in part recommending him to people who don't know him, and also just saying that I like seeing artists that I love get more successful and get more recognition for what they do. He's really incredible with wordplay and like his, just rhythmically his rapping ability is insane. And he has a lot of great content in his music, so I recommend him greatly.
Perfect that I so generously let you go first, because actually I have the great segue of building off of you talking about someone who deserves more recognition. I swear to God, I promise my last two recommendations.
Last two.
He's got two.
This is 4 total for the week. They just keep coming to me. I'm feeling inspired. It's actually based where I heard about my best friend's exorcism from is the YouTuber Dan Drambles. Really, I didn't really mention him when we were making the intro episode when we were talking about like inspirations for starting a podcast, but mostly because he doesn't have a podcast. But his YouTube channel, huge inspiration actually in that. It's just really positive, like uplifting, finding the silver lining type of stuff. And just if you're especially even into horror or video games or just movies in general, really good approachable discussion of those things. But it's just kind of like the type of positive talking about things you enjoy atmosphere from his videos that kind of made me be like, it could be fun to do something like that, hence this podcast. And yeah, but he's actually where I heard about my best friend's exorcism from. And then Jason knows what
real quick, I'll back that rec because Dan Drambles I think is very entertaining.
Oh yeah, very really funny, witty guy, seems like just such a nice dude. And then I also wanted to say in terms of musical artists not getting when we were pulling into ET, actually I was listening through music and what I was playing stopped playing, so it just did the like based off of thing, and this boy named Connor Kaufman, Kauffman, came up, and me and Jason were sitting there. Matt and Sean were in the car too, but me and Jason were sitting there just like, all right, this is okay. And then the drop happened and we were really vibing, kind of some good bops. Drop some bops. Connor Kaufman, check him out.
Definitely a little like pop punk influenced in at moments,
for sure.
Singing about breakups, that's the most pop punk thing ever. But
anyone else want to throw in Rex after I've dominated with 5 in 1 week? I know you guys have already also said things, but I feel like I said just and less chance.
My rec is for Jake, and it's to shut the fuck up.
I have a recommendation. How about I read everything this time?
If you would like to, yeah.
Ooh,
Sean.
You go.
I'm segueing us.
Go for it.
All right. So, in this episode, we're covering Batman Mask of the Phantasm, released on Christmas Day in 1993. Written by Alan Burnett, Paul Dini, Martin Pasco, I'm gonna hope I got that right. And Michael Reeves, directed by Eric Radomski and Bruce Timm, with cinematography by Sung-Il Choi. I'm hoping that's right.
close enough.
And art direction by Glenn Murderkami. Starring Kevin Conroy as Bruce Wayne / Batman. Dana Delaney as Andrea Beaumont. Hart Bachner as Arthur Reeves, Stacy Keach as the Phantasm and Carl Beaumont, Abe Vigoda as Salvatore Valestra, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. as Alfred, and Mark Hamill as the Joker. So, what is everyone's prior experience with this movie? I open the floor to you all.
Before anyone talks about the experience, I just want to thank Sean for accidentally taking the one with the really long creative and cast list. It has like 4 writers and shit. I appreciate that.
I will go first, probably because everyone else has seen this. I have only seen clips of this. I have seen the flashback scenes and the ending scene. I have not seen the rest of the web that sticks it all together. And now that I've seen it, makes a lot more sense. And I liked it.
I've seen this. It's been a real long time since I've seen the entirety of it. Like probably early teens when I saw that, like 12, 13 maybe, for the last time in its entirety. But, I've seen it a few times, very much enjoy it. It's a classic. I love the show as well that it's based on. Watched plenty of that as a child. Yeah. Also, shout out Kevin Conroy, repping the queers. It's my boy.
Kevin Conroy actually wrote a really good short story in, oh my god, I'm blanking on what the comic book was. Oh, it was in this year's DC Pride Anthology one-shot. Wrote a really good short comic story in that about his coming out and his dealing with various traumas in his personal life, and then specifically how those related to his being gay in the industry. So if I can throw in a rec.
I've actually heard about that before.
It's really good.
I mean to read it, but I never have gotten around to it. But yeah, again, shout out him. He's great. Incredible talent. And gay.
Yeah, I've seen this plenty before. I've seen Batman the Animated Series plenty before. And this movie's great. And I was very much looking forward to the fact that we got to watch it again. I was very surprised to hear that Matt hadn't seen it in full before. Because Matt you're such an animation guy that I would have thought you would have been all over this by now.
It's mostly due to the fact that I haven't seen the original animated series before, and I was going through that entire thing. I finished all of season 1. I was midway through season 2, and after that, I was going to finish the first 3 seasons, and then I was going to watch Mask of the Phantasm, and then move on to season 4. However, I had a summer class, and it threw everything out of the water, and most of my time was dedicated to work and to school. So I had no time, but I'm going to pick up where I left off, and you know what? Even though I just watched it, I'm going to rewatch it once I'm done season 3.
I like that you took this back to school and it's just about school fucking you up for a second time.
Yeah, it ruined all my plans. I did nothing but work and school for 6 weeks.
Ew. So from my experience, I actually can't definitively say whether I've seen this before or not, aside from today, because if I saw it, it was when I was really young and really didn't understand what I was watching. Because I watched Batman the Animated Series as a kid, but I never really got into it until later on. So it was as a 7-year-old tiny Sean, I could have watched it, but I can't tell you anything specific that I had or if I had actually watched it. It's one of those things that it's oh, I definitely know I saw Batman the Animated Series, but I can't tell you if Mask of the Phantasm was included in that or if I just watched parts of the show and it kind of blends in with everything. So I'm going to consider this my first time seeing it fully. So yeah.
I mean, this podcast is a great way of Batman Mask of the Phantasm is a movie that I've meant to go back and rewatch plenty of times and never just forgotten and never gotten around to it. So I mean, if nothing else, this podcast is a nice way to actually get me to rewatch some of these old movies that I love.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to bring something up real quick. I'm going to bring this up right now because we're not going to be talking about the animated series, but it has something to do with that. And now that we're talking about a movie related to that series, I'm going to bring something up real quick. Watching this movie and watching the first 1.5 season, first 3 seasons of the Batman animated series, I can understand why fans were upset about the redesigns in season 4, where we get the more modern Bruce Timm style, the more blocky and simplified versions of like Batman, the rest of his, how should I put it?
Allies and Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, Allies and Rogues Gallery. But yeah, like it's iconic now, but back in the day, it was very controversial. And seeing the Joker in this movie, spoilers, he's in this movie. But made me kind of understand why, because his design in this movie and in the animated series is much more intimidating than like the season 4 design, where he was like a little too simplified, trying to say. Luckily they rectified that and the Justice League animated series, but they don't have a movie, so we will no longer talk about them.
Damn.
This is a movie podcast, Sean. What do you want from me? We'll make a spin-off podcast.
Your love and affection, your admiration.
It has all those things, but I can't express those things while I'm here.
All right, well, how about we get into this plot? So we start our movie with a young Bruce Wayne as he meets Andra Beaumont while visiting his parents' grave. They begin a relationship while Bruce makes his first attempts at crime fighting. Despite his success at foiling, that looks like an L. It's just my goddamn screen. He is discouraged to find that the crooks do not fear him. Bruce becomes conflicted about whether to commit to his relationship with Andrea or defend Gotham City to avenge his parents, but eventually proposes marriage. Andrea accepts, only to mysteriously leave Gotham with her father, businessman Carl Beaumont, ending the engagement in a Dear John letter. Heartbroken, Bruce assumes the mantle of Batman.
Wow, that's a lot summarized in a single paragraph.
Well, I think it's because the plot summary really puts the flashback sequences up front, whereas throughout the movie it's kind of intercut back and forth between current day and past.
Going in chronological order as opposed to the way the movie actually presents this. So this is not the first thing that is presented in the movie.
Yeah, I guess if you...
It's probably just easier to write this than being like, and then this, and then back here, and then this, and then back here.
Yeah, I could see that being annoying.
Yeah, well, okay, well, I guess I should start off then.
You are actively talking.
I realized that too late.
Damn it, I have to speak now.
Yes.
He's so used to me swooping in and cutting him off that he would then when he needed it, it wasn't there.
I was actually thinking that. But yeah,
go fuck yourself, Matt.
Seeing Bruce Wayne happy is a sight that I am not used to seeing. And it's so fascinating how the fact that he's happy just gives him like a identity crisis, where like he can't be this, when he doesn't have the motivation to be this vigilante anymore, and that he just wants to be happy. You know what I'm trying to say? And like that's like a perspective you don't really see, because when you see Batman, you already see him just like totally committed to being the Batman, and like nothing phases him. And seeing him basically in was essentially just a black sweater and a black ski mask fighting people with ninja stars is pretty funny.
Yeah, that's something that I've always particularly liked about this movie, is that like its way of presenting Batman, more so than in other Batman movies, does really show like the more human side of Bruce Wayne. It doesn't take, oftentimes I think he's looked at as a character as just very, one-dimensional, and having just, he's only very serious in Batman or whatever, you know what I mean? Rather than this movie, I think, does a fantastic job of giving him a more human side to relate to.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the one thing that I definitely like about going into this, is that it gives him a range of emotions as opposed to just stonewalling everything. But I think it definitely does a good job at portraying, like, you see a lot more of Bruce, and like Bruce being Bruce, and even during this, it seems to be a more Bruce-led movie than it is a Batman-led movie, because, you see throughout it, Alfred even... Obviously, this is like earlier on, but it's like Alfred refers to Batman as his alter ego as opposed to being Bruce.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, because it focuses on Bruce as a human outside of the cowl, that it gets to... a strength that comes from that is it gets to explore why he is how he is and who he is without having to indulge itself in depicting the Wayne murders, which granted at the time of release weren't quite as played out in media, but it's still, looking back, when you look at all the different ways that the Waymers have been adapted to film and television, both live action and animated, it's really nice to see a movie that deals with an early days Batman and Bruce Wayne and isn't just like, do you get it? There's pearls on the ground, his parents are shot, and he's sad about it. Like, obviously that's a huge factor, it's still his motivation, but because they kind of reflect on Andrea's loss and his relationship with her and what they could have had, you get to explore who he is in a different light and through a different angle, and it doesn't feel redundant to a lot of other Batman media.
Yeah, I think, like, the way that I always interpreted Batman as a character is that, like, the reason he's so detached, and obviously I think most people probably assume this as well, even when it's not shown, is that even the reason he's so detached and serious all the time is because he almost, like, it's a defense mechanism to, like, not have the pain that goes along with being emotionally present and affectionate towards people. But I think that this movie, more so than others, shows, like, the actual traumas or whatever issues that led him to feel that way and to feel like he has to be Batman and be ultra serious all the time, rather than just having it be implied.
My favorite thing is that we get to see, as I said before, we get to see Bruce happy, and we get to see more of how Bruce works, because the fact that he is happy, his guilt is like killing him on the inside to the point where he has to visit his parents' grave and like basically beg them to like basically forgive him for not keeping his promise. And then like Andrea comes behind him and assures him that this is what they would have wanted, and it's like that point it should have been like, they just marry and have a happy life together. That's usually how it ends. However, last minute, Bruce proposes to Andrea first, and she says yes.
That's about to explain the whole plot before I can.
Well, it's I'm not gonna get too much into it, but I have to get to some points. But yeah, Bruce proposes to Andrea, and Andrea accepts, and it just seems like it should be just this happy ending, right, where they'll just live a happy life together. But last minute, Andrea rejects the proposal, and it paints him taking the mantle of the Batman of more of a tragedy than it already is, because the fact that he's turning into Batman is already entrenched in tragedy from his parents dying. But like, it's even more like sad because you see that he was so close to not being that Batman and just being a normal happy person, and that was unfortunately taken from him. And my favorite thing was that when he put on the cowl, you just see Alfred's reaction. He was terrified of how Bruce looked. It was like he didn't even recognize him. It was amazing.
Yeah, I had similar things in my notes about Alfred's reaction of like shock at seeing Bruce don the cowl for the first time. And I think as a whole, it's something that, and I don't know if I talked about this in any of our previous episodes about Batman movies, I can't remember, but I don't really fuck with the whole, Bruce Wayne's really the mask thing. I feel like that's such a like level 1 read on the character. I think in the end, both personas have certain manufactured elements, and there's not really one or the. I think in the end he's Bruce Wayne. Like, you can't erase that from him. He can't be so defined by a trauma that happened to him as a child and not be Bruce Wayne. Like, I just don't agree with that read, but I think there's element to truth in that. There's manufactured elements to both Batman and to the public facing Bruce Wayne, and that ultimately the version of himself that's really him is who he is around the people he trusts, around Alfred and the Bat family, where he can open up and be himself and process things and try to heal. Like you said, talked about so tragically in this movie, is he's finally healing, and then Rune gets reopened when he loses Andrea. He loses that life raft that he put kind of all his eggs in one basket. He has Alfred right there, but he's all invested in the one thing, and he loses it. And I think this movie, again, he in the comics, the true Bruce Wayne is the Bruce Wayne you see when he interacts with Alfred, when he interacts with Nightwing and Robin and Batgirl and the Bat family. And in the case of this movie, you see the true Bruce Wayne when he's with Andrea. You see what makes him happy and what what pushes him and motivates him outside of just pain, which makes it, like you said, all the more tragic when he becomes Batman again, because it's like he had that exit ramp to get off and he didn't take it, couldn't take it, whereas most Batman iterations, there's just the initial point of tragedy that spawns Batman.
Yeah, that's the thing though. It's just like, it is true that saying Bruce Wayne is a mask and Batman is, the real person is pretty lazy, because in my opinion, I think Batman is more of just a coping mechanism that Bruce needs. Otherwise, he'll just go freaking crazy. And it's just really sad that all of this could have been avoided. That he could have moved on from being the traumatized child who's seen his parents die. He could have moved on from that, because during the flashbacks, it's obvious that it just haunts him. From the picture of his parents up in the wall, he just continuously stares at it, to him visiting his parents. It's just he can't move on from that, and he was so close, and was unfairly taken from him. It's so sad.
All right, I'm going to continue along with our plot read. I have some things I want to mention too, but I'll mention them later. So, 10 years later, Batman breaks up a meeting of Gotham crime bosses led by Chucky Soul. When Soul tries to escape in his car, he is killed by a cloaked figure, the Phantasm, who causes him to speed out of control and fatally crash into a building. Batman is witnessed at the scene, and it is believed that he killed Saul, with City Councilman Arthur Reeves, who is corrupt and on the mob's payroll, vowing to have him arrested, much to the chagrin of Batman's ally Commissioner James Gordon, who insists Batman is innocent and refuses to partake in the manhunt against him. One of the things I do want to mention, I have 2 points that I want to make. Nobody's talked about the art style yet, but the Art Deco 1950s, 1960s art style is just goddamn gorgeous, and obviously everybody talks about it a lot because Bruce Timm, it's just been assigned to his personal style, but I still think it's a super creative style, and just to see it a lot of it does come to life, and a lot of it is it's that style that I reminisce back on, because it's just not a lot of animation sort of or I don't want to say not a lot of animation nowadays. If anything, it's getting more stylized. But not a lot of animation back in the day it had that much style to it. It either had that 80s cheesy action style that was typically what was seen at the time, versus this, where it's something so stylized and something so different, where it kind of sticks out, and because of the way it was stylized, it kind of has this timeless feel to it that doesn't really it doesn't get bogged down by the fact that this was made a couple decades ago as of now, that it's not something that I can say is really aged.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Style oozes from this
to the death.
Guys, one of you just talk. We should try that.
Well,
Matt, go.
All right. Well, as I was saying, style oozes from every single frame of this movie, and in the show as well. But we're not going to get into that. But it's quite obvious that they focused a lot on the world building and the style, especially with the fact that they drew everything on black paper, which totally adds to the atmosphere, because there's just so much shadow, so much shade. It's such a distinct
they
look.
make a great use of color throughout the entire thing, which is really goddamn impressive.
The red sky stands out so much as it almost fades into black as it goes up. The whole city and everyone in it kind of just looks like a silhouette.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, though. It's just the city is barely visible, but you can still see the shape of the building. And so you still get an idea of what it looks like, but not detail enough to pinpoint a certain date to it. And so it becomes more timeless.
Yeah, I also wanted to before Sean even brought it up, I wanted to mention the animation style as well, because first of all I think the opening credits, that whole
as it flies through the city.
Yeah, as it flies through the city, that whole opening part was so beautiful. And I remember I even said to you guys out loud while watching it, there's not a lot of shit like that, whether it be now or even at the time, it just doesn't, it has so much personality to its own thing. And I think, going back to all the shadow and everything, it sets this tone of mystery within the city, which I think is perfect for a character like Batman, who's meant to be a detective. That's it's so smart and the way they drew it is so beautifully attached to that character.
The animation is so perfect for a noir story and series.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off what you said. Like, it has so much personality, even though it has a color palette of black, brown, and navy blue. Like,
And a little red.
exactly. When you say nowadays that when a show has like personality, it's mostly just like, like a lot of like a more brighter color palette than this.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I feel like what makes it special is, like, it's not the amount of colors they use, it's their use of the colors that they have. Like, it's all very, like, dark-toned colors, but the way they use them is so fitting to the themes of the show and the movie.
Extremely atmospheric.
It's not in your face about it. It's subtle, but it's bold. Like it's an oxymoron. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but it has like a subtle boldness. And in the same way that it's almost oxymoronic in that while it feels era specific, it's also timeless. Somewhat just due to the sheer quality of it. It hasn't aged today. Like, if I didn't know better, if you told me this came out last week, I'd be like, yep. Like, it just looks so good and so smooth. And that's just such a credit to everybody on the art team.
Oh, we didn't even get to like the actual animation itself. We just talked about how everything was drawn. All the movements are so smooth. Like, the action was amazing as well. Like, just there's so much impact on all the punches. The movement is so smooth, and well, that's really it. Like, I can't really add any more to that other than just saying like the animation was good.
Animation good. If anything, the one thing that I kind of like is how much one, with the coloration, the fact that it's like, they don't feel, despite the fact that they're using such a limited color palette, it doesn't feel limited at all. And plus, when they do have brighter colors, like, you see the whites of Batman's eyes, or you see something like the sky where it's like something's a different color, it always stands out because of how dark everything else is. And also kind of add to that, like, the one thing I am surprised about, because, like, I haven't gone back to the animated series in a while, but, like, it's just surprising how dark the movie actually is. Not, like, visually, but tonally, too. How, like, this is just... It just surprises me, because it's, like, obviously, again, some of these things are things you wouldn't really see in, like, a cartoon nowadays, where it's, like... Unless it's like an adult animated cartoon, and even then it's kind of like you're itching on the fact that it's like, if it's an adult animated cartoon, you've got something that's like Family Guy, and that's as far as you really go in terms of what you get, where it's just adult.
Unless it's primal.
Well, yeah, some more things are starting to come out of the woodwork, but it's like...
You still don't get a lot of introspective character studies in animation.
Yeah, you just don't get a lot of that, and you don't get a lot of, like... This manages to have a mature and dark tone without overtly being, like... we're for adults, and also we're for children. It doesn't really pick a lane. It chooses to be in, like, a very general area that kind of makes it work so well that it's not catering to it obviously is, but it's not catering to any one particular person. It's more trying to be like its own thing, if that makes...
It's just a good story.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, that it's just a quality story.
I mean, the one thing that still surprises me is there's blood in it. There's, very... I don't want to say gory, because that's not the right word, but it's like fairly violent, I guess is the best way to put it.
Like, when someone gets hit, it has impact, and they react like they were actually punched. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, some animated fights, they just punch each other and they're just throwing another punch. It's like they're punching bags, basically.
And some of the more extreme violence is kind of implied, like the Phantasm is murdering people with like a bladed gauntlet, which you don't necessarily like get graphic images of, but it's still more than enough to come across.
Oh, yeah.
Or just in general, the gang violence is not necessarily shown, but you feel it.
A perfect example of that is the first kill. The first gangster, basically, when they drive off the parking lot, they basically drive into the next building over, and you don't see the body, but you hear the horn like continuously honking, basically implying that, he slammed his head and now he's just dead. His head on the car horn. It's more implied. But yeah, like this is much more adult than the animated series. Like, the animated series is it does balance like a lighter tone with like a more mature theme. But this is darker than the show, and it is for the better.
I mean, one of the things I always like to think about is how, like, you know, I don't want to be like the back in my day kind of person, but like you look back to like then versus now, and it's like something like guns where that's not even particularly allowed. Smoking is heavily not allowed in any like animated again, unless you're like that Family Guy thing where it's like you're just adult animated comedy, or you're something that's like a bit smaller. Like even as much as like, again, I know Matt, you mentioned Primal, it's not as big as say other, you know, it's not as big as like something like again Family Guy in terms of adult animated content. There isn't really a lot of adult animated content that actually, like, you know, while that is not, it does not fit into that Family Guy mold, but is also popular.
Yeah, we basically don't get like shows like the early Simpsons anymore, where like it's aimed toward adult, right? And it's super popular, even though it has like very, very mature themes and messages.
Or even just something like this, which I think fits that all ages. There's nothing explicitly inappropriate. There's no reason you wouldn't show this to a child, but it's definitely not quote unquote for children.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like animation in general nowadays is unfortunately much more, how should I say, like censored, neutered.
There's almost two extremes. You're either a young, and again, there is exceptions. There's plenty of great animation out there, and I'm not even saying the things on the two extremes are bad, but it's almost like you are a kid show, and the only person who could find value in it is a child, or you were super adult edgy like Harley. Like, to me, it's like a Batman show on a Cartoon Network would be probably way more childish now. But then you also have Harley Quinn that is like saying fuck left and right, and they're having sex on screen, and that's all fine, but it's like there's almost no middle. There's nothing that like is for applicable to people at various age ranges that you can almost develop with and appreciate more as you grow.
Yeah.
It's either not for kids at all, or it's just for kids.
Yeah, you can't even show a character punching another character. Yeah, a lot of cartoon channels are like that nowadays.
I wouldn't say it's like that where like something like violence isn't okay. We can't show that on this cartoon. Like things aren't that like censored, but I think probably one of the bigger pictures that gives a better idea is and I'll recommend this for everybody, but for like the guy who made Jason's Naked.
I'm so hot.
Yes, you are.
Jason just took his shirt off. That's for the fucking Patreon.
Please invest. It's an incredible site.
But the creator of Gravity Falls, so like his name's Alex Hirsch, for anybody who doesn't know. One of the things that he put up recently on like Twitter, it wasn't too long ago, was like all of the notes he was sent by Disney's censorship team, and all the things that they said that like weren't allowed, and some of them were like the dumbest shit. And it's like, obviously, while some of those were probably valid things that were sent, the ones that he showed obviously were not. And it shows like obviously it's an understandable perspective of like, you don't want to portray things that are like, you know, could be taken the wrong way, but there comes to a point where it's like you're backing yourselves into a corner and not, you know, making, you know, art. Which Disney isn't going to see it that way. They're going to be the corporation that sees it as this is going to be used to make money, and I want to make money off of this.
This is
content.
The same company that canceled the Owl House for being too gay. I'm not surprised.
And also even post-release up for Gravity Falls, like I'm facing censorship while making it, but they put it on Disney Plus and removed a lot of the Illuminati imagery.
Yeah, and
editing it and editing art post-release. And I'm not talking about like throwing up. Look, if something has something that could be sensitive for someone, throwing up a fucking trigger warning in front, that's fine. That's not editing. You're not changing the art. You're giving someone a warning who could be legitimately having an issue. You don't know what's going on in their life. But to actually physically edit art and remove an existing form from existence is so fucked up and evil.
Some of the Looney Tunes cartoons, right, had like, you know, offensive portrayals of like certain minorities, and the thing is that they are a product of their time, and we should learn from these, but I don't think they should be outright removed. But like some of the animations have like a little basically a little slide in the beginning basically saying that these and portrayals of like these people were of the time and are not appropriate these days. That's very good, because that's very educational.
that absolutely should
Yeah.
and needs to be included in front of those things. But we're not even talking about something that's severe. Even we're talking about taking fucking like pyramids out of Gravity Falls. Like we can't have like a background gag in a show. We're not talking about something that is racist, something that is fucked up. We're just changing a vision.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I know that's speaking towards a specific, but it's just it's one of those things that you tend to see in like tandem with it happening to a lot of other shows. You see a lot of that just coming out of the woodwork. You're seeing a lot of these shows for just not being able to be made because they can't be marketable or used for like, or they're seen by whatever corporation is, producing said content is seen as like unmarketable, or they don't want to do it because it won't make, them content. The content won't allow them to sell merchandise, things like that. I understand. It's one of those things where it's like, I hate that it's a situation where like that's kind of necessary and it isn't like, I feel like animation is given a bad rap no matter what, in general. And like, it's probably one of my favorite art forms out there. It's one of those things that it's just, I always hate that it always has to be in tandem with some way of like monetizing it when it's like, it's one thing that I hate because it's like I understand and comprehend that animation takes a fuck ton of time and really it needs a lot of money and effort put into it for it to actually be good, and it's one of those things where it's like you continually see animation over time. It sadly doesn't make as much money as some other forms of media, and it just kind of makes me like, this is speaking very generally, but like it's just one of those things where it's like I really love animation and I really do love, and I think the things that are made and the things that we do have, like this movie here, like deserve goddamn praise for being as good as they are and finding a way to survive in such an industry that's so fucking terrible. But it's just one of those things that I really wish it was different.
Oh, I was going to say real quick, like at the risk of extending this tangent further because it's already gone on so long and I want to eventually get talked back to the movie, but like Sean's spitting right now, so I just kind of wanted to back him up and say, like, me and Matt were talking about this earlier before recording. It is absolutely insane that this is one of, as of the day we're recording this, one of 5 movies, animated movies, to get a full theatrical release based on a comic book. One of 5. Comic books, you fucking use it as a storyboard. Like, just put some motion in that shit. Like, are you kidding me? And they already have distinct art styles that you can adapt the artist's art styles and then pay them properly. It'll be 6 and 7 soon with Spider-Verse 2 and 3. But it is, like, absolutely fucking insane to me that you have a hand-drawn medium that you're just... And there's, like, direct-to-DVD ones, but you only have 5. This, Lego Batman, Spider-Verse, Super Pets, Big Hero 6.
You can't exploit 2D animators as much as 3D animators. So right now the big thing is 3D animation, and even then they are not treated with the respect they deserve. I'm looking at you, Disney, especially how you treat the Pixar films, especially like Turning Red and Luca, how they're just, what was it, just released on Disney Plus, while their fucking shitty ass movie Mulan you had to pay $30 to see.
It's funny that they have animated movies with POC leads and like good rap in them too, are the ones that are getting shoved straight to streaming. Soul.
Yeah, that was a great movie that I wish I saw in theaters or paid for so I can support it. But no, it's animation. So, you know what? We would rather just release it and not give people money. Let's not give animators money.
Talking about things that deserve your money, I'm going to continue this plot thread. All right, so the Phantasm murders another gangster, Buzz Bronski, in the same cemetery Bruce met Andrea. Oh my god, every time I see her name, I want to read Andrea. I wasn't the only one! Bronski's bodyguards see the Phantasm flee the scene and mistake the mysterious figure for Batman. Batman investigates the scene of Bronski's death and encounters Andrea, inadvertently revealing his identity to her. Batman finds evidence linking Carl Beaumont with Saul, Bronski, and a third gangster, Salvatore Valestra, later finding a photograph of the four together in Valestra's home. Paranoid that Batman will come for him next, the now elderly Valestra asks Reeves for help but is refused. In desperation, he turns to the Joker. The Phantasm goes to kill Valestra at his mansion, only to find him dead from exposure to Joker's venom. Seeing Phantasm through a camera, Joker realizes Batman is not the murderer and detonates a bomb he planted in the mansion. Phantasm escapes with a blast and is pursued by Batman before disappearing. Ooh, spooky. Batman is ambushed by the police with Andre. Oh my god, I can't do this. I hate her name
It's
so
a regular ass name.
I'm gonna get one take. Well, I'm not actually gonna do this to be a pain in the ass, but I'm gonna get one take of
Every
you saying
single-
Andrea correctly, and then just dub it over every time you have to say the name. I just wanted to
Andrea
make that
saving
joke.
him just before he can be arrested. She explains to Bruce her father embezzled money from Valestra and was forced to repay it. A greedy Valestra then demanded he pay more and put a hit on Carl, prompting him to go into hiding with Andrea. Together once again, the two consider resuming their relationship. Bruce believes Carl Beaumont to be the Phantasm until he takes another look at the photo with him, Valestra, and Valestra's men. One of them has the exact same face as the Joker, and it was goddamn hilarious to watch him just put a little red mark on his face.
It's not even a red mark. He just took like a red coloring pencil and just colored in his mouth with like red lipstick. As it's just, oh, that's the Joker.
It was also, he had the same face shape,
it
so it was
worked.
kind of like fairly obvious from like the moment that you
Yeah,
kind
his-
of see the one guy.
His face was
but,
a little
like,
too distinct to be just a bodyguard for this mobster.
but he's a hitman, Matt.
Hey, he is a hitman. Put some respect on it.
I'm so sorry.
Take
Hitman
the photo
chauffeur.
and be like, oh.
in regards to the Joker and the Joker's inclusion in this movie, I do think it's true that it's potentially a little unnecessary. It feels potentially almost a little obligatory to be like, this is a Batman movie, Joker must be in it. That said, I actually do think it's better for it. I understand that's like the one thing I've kind of criticism I've ever kind of heard of the movie is that like Joker doesn't really need to be there. The movie's about Bruce and Andrea, and the mob stuff. But I think ultimately, while I like sort of softly agree with that, I think in general, I'm just never going to complain about getting more Mark Hamill Joker. That's just, guy's perfect. He, as is Kevin Conroy, as there's pretty much any voice cast for this. And a lot of the good things we say, as Matt said, apply to the Batman the Animated Series as well as this. The visuals, the tone, the characterization, the voice cast. But ultimately, I think her having that connection with Joker being, before he was Joker, being the guy that killed her father, naturally tying her to him just as much, if not more, as Bruce/Batman is tied to the Joker, is just another example of the bond that him and Andrea share and the kind of tightrope they're both walking, as Alfred says later in the movie, in this kind of line between vengeance and justice, and this line between controlling your trauma and using your trauma versus letting it use you. So while you could take him out of the movie and just make it so some mobster killed him and it would be the same, between that and just the general joy between the iconography of the Joker connection to Batman and then what that means for Andrea, and then just the general joy of seeing Hamill as Joker anytime possible, I think it's a good decision, even if it was just made for the sake of including him.
I like his inclusion because it just shows the difference between Bruce and Andrea. Like, Bruce, no matter what Joker does, is just not willing to kill him because that's not justice. That's vengeance. While Andrea is, well, you say they're both walking in the tightrope. Well, Andrea already felt like she's already just seeking vengeance, and she is going after Joker to kill him after she already killed two former mob bosses. So it's, so Joker there is just, he has a connection to both of them, right? And he shows the difference between, unfortunately, how Andrea and Bruce have just drifted apart and how they could just never be together because they're just too different. And I blame the recent getting sick of like Batman and Joker have to be like together no matter if like Joker has a movie or like show, or like Batman has a movie or show, that they have to be in each other's things. That's like more of like a recency bias, because it is true that recently, like if there's like a Batman media project, there's going to be Joker in it. They just been doing that a lot lately, especially with like the shows and video games, like the Arkham games. Like he's in every single one of them, and so like yeah. I can kind of see like people like, recently like going to this movie be like, oh, Joker's in this again. But like, it wasn't that big of a problem back then. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like more of a recency.
Yeah, I think like I don't have a super strong opinion on it. I can get why people might think it's forced in to have, Joker come about and be such a big part of the movie towards the end, but at the end of the day, I somewhat agree with you, Jake, that, like, when it comes down to it, like, it gives Batman and Andrea, like, a common opponent to display that, like, even though they're both on the same side of things, they view things so differently. Like, even though they're both on the side of, like, taking down the criminals and the quote-unquote rotten parts of Gotham, they're so fundamentally different in how they want to go about doing that. And I think that the movie using that to show that, to demonstrate that, is good. And whether or not it's the Joker, to me, doesn't really matter. If anything, like you said, getting to hear Mark Hamill's Joker voice in a movie is sick. Whether
I think the one thing I'd say that I kind of wish would have been, you know, in this is just more of the Phantasm. I don't know why, other than, like, I despite, you know, did we get to that point where they reveal who the Phantasm is in the plot? I can't remember what I read.
I think he did. They kind of get into it. Read the next. You can always read the next paragraph and then say it,
Yeah,
but I think he talked about it.
Okay, you know what? I'll read the next paragraph and then we'll get to it. I'll get to my point. So, continuing with our plot. Continuing with our plot. Believing him to be behind the Phantasm in order to erase his mob connections, Joker presses Reeves for more information before poisoning him with venom. Reeves is taken to the hospital where Batman interrogates him. Reeves, who worked as Carl's accountant before going into politics, confesses he helped the Beaumonts escape but told Valestra their location in exchange for the funding needed to launch his first campaign. Both Batman and Joker deduce that the Phantasm is Andrea, who intends to wipe out the Valestra mob for killing her father and ruining her chance to marry Bruce. Alright, so there we go, I actually get it. So the one thing I really wish I could have gotten more of is the Phantasm. I wanted to see more of the Phantasm and get more of a build-up to that character, because while I do love the Phantasm, and I love that it's, I like that the reveal is that it's Andrea, even though it's a little bit more obvious than, you know, as you go through it. But, like, I for a movie that is about, like, you know, is Mask of the Phantasm, I just feel like there wasn't a lot of the Phantasm in it. Because you see the first scene, you have the scene in the graveyard where she, like, crushes the one guy, and like a couple other scenes of her running away, but you don't really get, like, a lot of these cool points aside from the first two people she murders. And I kind of would have liked to see more of that, and more of, like, you know, seeing how far, you know, the Phantasm has gone, seeing more of what they've done. I just feel like I would have liked more of that. Not that I didn't get enough, just that, like, I feel like I wanted more by the end of it.
I tend to agree with you, because I even, like, going into this today, I remember, like, it had been years since I watched this, but I was like, I feel like I remember Phantasm not being in it as much as I would have thought. And then it was confirmed when I watched it today. And I do think, because I think it's such a cool character that, to the best of my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, was created for this movie.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about. I'll let you finish your point first.
Yeah, so, like, especially for that point, because of the fact that, like, this is pretty much the only bit of media that we've seen this character in. I think it would have been cooler to, like, see... Especially because I think the character design is so cool. Like, the mask is so cool, and the fog that's around the Phantasm anytime it's on screen, and the hook that it wears, like, that. It's just such a cool character design that I would have liked to seen that in action more.
Also that they play into the theatrics of it's the Phantasm. It is a legitimate, they make it like it's a phantasm, like it's this illusion that you're constantly seeing that just disappears before you can even touch it.
Well, before I get to my point, when Jake said OC, I physically cringed. Not because, you know, what the way he said it or anything. It's just because that word has been ruined by Twitter and DFan art. It is an original character, but just abbreviated to OC is just, ugh. It's awful. That word is ruined forever.
You don't want to hear about my
I will
Sonic
kick
OC?
your face, Sean. Anyway, I don't mind it as much because the build up to the Phantasm is just learning Andrea as a character. As you get to learn more about her, you get to see, like, you know, you get to start a picture of, like, they basically how the Phantasm came to be and the Phantasm's motivations. And yeah, I would like to see the Phantasm more in action, but like, I don't think we necessarily got like, I feel like the Phantasm wasn't underutilized. The Phantasm was used as necessary. And things like, its origins are explained through Andrea's backstory. The only thing I can really say is I wish we knew how, like the suit, the hook, the freaking fog, like the chemical she uses to disappear, how that works. But that's that could be explained in like a booklet or something like that. It doesn't really need to be explained in the movie.
I also just feel like it's more interesting if she's like the characters, like Sean said, like this mirror of like a phantom, like it's kind of more interesting and creepy that she just can appear and disappear. And like also Batman disappears all the time, and that's never made any sense. But ultimately, well, I am kind of on Matt's side in terms of I didn't really feel like an absence or anything. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have complained about more. I felt like the use was appropriate. I want to say I think I would like to see the Phantasm used more outside of this movie. I know it made some DCAU comic appearances or references or something. To my knowledge, actually, Tom King's Batman Catwoman 12-issue miniseries, it was the first book to like really majorly use the Phantasm as a character. And that was, I believe, originally intended to be in continuity and then kind of fell into this at most murky gray area of continuity of being canon. In general, quick divergent, I love Tom King, but I'm very mixed on his Batman run. A lot of good ideas, but also a lot of square peg and round hole shit. But ultimately, I think that character is such a wonderful foil to Batman that it's so and it became so beloved so quickly in such a masterpiece of a movie that it's insane to me that the Phantasm never got like molded into mainstream DC continuity and got used more. It's honestly part of my headcanon. Like when I read an in continuity quote unquote canon, I could give a whole spiel about canon. I'll stay off that for now. But a quote unquote in continuity Batman book, it's almost like I almost read it in my headcanon as informed by this happened to him. Even if within technically the official main DC universe, Phantasm didn't happen. It just feels like such a natural motivation for that character that it's like crazy to me that they didn't just like adopt this as part of his backstory.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like such a, and it is weird how you mentioned like it's such an iconic and beloved story and movie that like it is weird that it hasn't been more accepted into the zeitgeist of Batman's history.
I also think Phantasm would work very well in the Reeves.
I was going to mention that.
I will say this, I'm not the type of person who's like, we're going to adapt everything to live action, because fuck that. I think comic books and animation and live action are all different and beautiful and equal mediums. It's not like a promotion or anything, but I just do genuinely think that it could actually fit very well within that vision. That said, I should be careful what I wish for, because you never know when something's going to become wildly oversaturated.
Honestly, I don't mind that the Phantasm hasn't really been used in other medium, because the Phantasm was used perfectly in this movie, and it ended pretty well.
I just think I want the validation of it being officially like canonized into Batman's like main lore.
Yeah, I can understand that, but like even if Phantasm is not like used that much, you can still just appreciate the Phantasm just by watching this movie and just be satisfied of the Phantasm's usage in this movie. And like that's the thing though, is that a lot of times when you get your wish is you often get it more than you asked for. And I'm glad that Phantasm is not one of those characters that's just been overutilized. And that makes watching this movie more special. They're just like, oh my god, this character is so good that you want to see more. But I feel like a lot of times it should stay like that. Like it just if you leaves you wanting more, then
I mean, to elaborate on what I meant when I said like I feel like the movie uses the Phantasm perfectly. I feel like it's definitely more of the situation of like, yes, I do wish I got more of this like character and seeing it more in action, not like the situation of like I want to see it everywhere and I want to watch it now. Just more that like I wouldn't complain if there was more of the Phantasm in it, and if I got to see more of the Phantasm just be mysterious and do its thing. That, like, I feel like that's more of what I'd want, because, like, honestly, again, if the Phantasm didn't appear in anything else and this was the only thing that I got, I would still be happy with what I got, because the character was cool as it was, served its purpose and served its purpose perfectly, and then left. Because you don't necessarily need more of it. If anything, it's a want at that point, not something that's, like, has to permeate throughout, the rest of Batman's mythos. But I do appreciate it having existed and having it there. Whether it's, I would obviously wish it were canon to some extent, more, recognized and within comics itself. It's one of those things where it's like, I am still happy with the adaptation that I got. Or not adaptation, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm still happy with what I got and the character that I got, and having that character in existence is just a treat in and of itself. So, like, it's something I do genuinely love. Obviously, I can always wish for more, and obviously I will, but it's not something that I necessarily need.
Well, if it makes you a little happy, Andrea does appear as the Phantasm again in I believe is one of the Batman Beyond episodes in Justice League Unlimited. Basically, Bruce Timm wanted to put, like, a finale episode on the Batman Beyond series because Batman Beyond got canceled. Oh my god, I'm not going to get into that. But they basically was able to put, like, a nice little knot on it, and basically you get to see her again as the Phantasm, basically trying to recreate the tragedy of Bruce Wayne with Terry McGinnis shit. But yes, basically that's a whole other plot that'll take forever to explain. But you get to see her again, and she basically at first takes part in the plan to make Terry the new Batman by murdering Terry's parents. But at the last minute, like, she refused. She just realized that, this is not what Batman stands for. And it's a nice cameo, but, like, I could kind of, like, understand if someone sees that cameo and just wonders, what have you been doing, like, all these years? Like, you're still wearing, like, the Phantasm suit, so what have you been doing? So I can kind of see that, but, she was used again, though she didn't speak in that role, so which is kind of sad.
Speaking of things I'm missing out on, let's not miss out on this ending.
Sean is killing it with the
Goddamn, I
segues.
deserve a goddamn medal for that. So Andrea tracks down Joker, her father's killer, to his hideout in Gotham's abandoned World's Fair. They fight but are interrupted by Batman, who begs Andrea to stop, to no avail. Joker prepares to blow up the fair but is seized by Andrea, who bids Batman goodbye. Having barely survived the blast, Batman finds no trace of either Andrea or the Joker. Bruce is later consoled by Alfred in the Batcave, who assures him Andrea could not have been helped, before finding Andrea's locket containing a picture of them together. A sorrowful Andrea departs Gotham, and a saddened Batman, cleared of the accusations against him, resumes his crime fighting. The end.
And it is a very, very strong finale. I think Joker's use is also really important in the finale, because now looking back at it after that conversation, I also think, like, how much more boring it would be in the whole World's Fair setting if you didn't have that chaotic third force between them. And that classic, I'm a sucker for any time there is I'm fighting you, but I'm also fighting the person who's trying to kill you, who doesn't want to kill me, but wants to kill you. Like, that whole, like, triangle, anytime that comes up in something, it's just really entertaining.
I still appreciate how sad and mysterious the ending still is, because obviously you get, like, the ending is just sad. It's kind of like it's not even really a happy ending for anybody, because, Bruce doesn't get what he wants. Andrea kind of gets what she wants, but, is really leading a life that isn't suitable for anyone, really.
If I can posit a slightly positive spin on it, I think overall you're right, it's kind of a sad ending, but in the scheme of, like, I mean, obviously Joker's alive, Joker subsequently shows up in the DCAU plenty, but when you have the scenario where about, a minute before the ending, Bruce believes that the love of his life is dead and completely fell victim to her demons and to her past, Whereas you eventually find out that she not only survived, but is leaving Gotham and is, while she has already killed most of the people she had a vendetta against, is leaving behind killing the Joker. Maybe because she falsely believes it, but I mean, there's, again, within the larger continuity, Joker losers has had plenty. If she wanted to, she could have come back, yada, yada, yada. I feel like there's an element of, while it may not be the traditional happy ending where the guy gets the girl, I actually think this movie does a better job displaying a sort of happy ending for Bruce Wayne that I think in general, I am more than ready to have a happy Bruce Wayne, even if it's not a traditional happy. In general, comic books, and let him fucking marry Catwoman. Like, let him just, like, we get it. He's sad. Like, there's fucking decades of that material. I don't need it. And I like that this movie, while it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending, it feels like you get to see that while he's still Batman, there's almost an element of peace he came to, and that he may have actually been able to help Andrea.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going
John.
to fight you to the death, Matt. One of the things I do definitely like is just the setting of the World's Fair. While it is definitely on the nose of, like, you know, what it's thematically representing, I do kind of like the idea of showing it how it's, like, you know, in the beginning you see it as like this really happy, cool, like Disneyland-esque world, and then by the end of it you see it's like tarnished, destroyed, obviously gets blown up eventually, but like it's just while that is on the nose, I do kind of like that sort of setting of seeing, like, you know, in the beginning it's seen as this bright future that you could have had in terms of Bruce Wayne, and then, like, it ends with, you know, essentially all of that being, you know, destroyed and it's gone. So what could have been really isn't. So I while that is, like, such a fairly obvious on the nose kind of, like, theme, I like that it was put into the setting itself, as opposed to I like that they decided to put it into the setting, and it did lead to a lot of, like, very cool background art and designs that I think were really amazing to see. Also to see them essentially go full out with Art Deco style and kind of, like, really go hard with it in a certain setting, so it's just neat.
I don't mind it. I don't think it's, like, it is on the nose, but it's, like, it's very passable because they built that place up in the beginning, and it's just a really cool setting to, you know, have these, like, giant set pieces for the fights. And so, yeah, like, you know, it's a little on the nose, but they utilized it to its fullest potential, and so I don't really mind it because, like, it was still a cool setting for them to be in, you know, to have their grand finale. And yeah, as you said, it's a really cool setting. Basically seeing this, like, once seen utopia being, like, a rusted wasteland.
And also seeing the Batman and Joker just have
That's what I wanted to bring up. I
fucking
love that fight scene, as brief as it is, of them fighting over the little setup tiny world.
I also love the attention to detail of when, like, after the point of Joker getting kicked in the face, he loses the tooth, and for the rest of the time you see him, he's missing a tooth.
Oh, that the initial hit that, like, made him lose his tooth in the first place, that was fantastic. Basically, Batman just kicks him in the face, and you see blood splatter, and you see his tooth fall out. That was awesome.
That whole scene, that whole, like, fight between them is impeccable. I have no notes.
They also fight with, like, their ideal styles. Like, Joker is, even though he is fighting, he also seems like he's having a great time doing so. Oh, but, like, I actually want to talk about, like, the ending a little bit, and I guess you could make a positive spin toward it, but, like, Bruce's reaction to seeing the locket, and then Andrea's response to the guy saying, "Are you alone, or do you want to be left alone?" And she just says, "I am." It's just really sad. It just looks like they just both accepted the fact that just, like, their future together is impossible, and that they just won't be happy.
There definitely is some kind of positive read on that, in the sense of, like, it's really about them letting go, and there is some positivity in letting go and moving on from something, but at the same time, you know, it is something that's very clearly painful for both characters involved, and, you know, them moving on from that situation really is only positive if they make it positive. And it's, you know, where the movie leaves off, you don't know where that goes. You don't know if they ever you know, turn around and make something positive of that and fully move on and become happy elsewhere or not, you know? I think there's definitely a positive read on it, but I think it comes across very somber either way.
Yeah, it's I think it's more tragic because you saw what could have been. You saw what could have been. You saw what they could have had. And it's just the fact that, like, they just accepted that they can't have it. It's just really, really sad because they both could have been so much happier.
For my money, the best scene in the movie is you talked about it a little bit earlier, but Bruce pleading at his parents' gravestone to, I didn't see this coming. I didn't count on being happy. Please tell me it's okay. Looking from this, like, permission that ultimately only he can give himself to move on and to actually live a life. And the side irony, of, like, any decent parent wouldn't want this. They would want him to be happy. They'd love Andrea. And that is just such a powerful, that is, like, to me, that is, like, the Batman scene. I think it made me, not just this movie, but, like, any Batman movie is him begging at that gravestone. Just please, can I be happy? Like, and not letting himself.
That scene really, I mean, that really, like, summarizes my point that, like, this movie gives Batman the emotional depth that he deserves as a character, because the emotions there, it's just not shown a lot, and this actually gives you showing him have this inner battle with himself, and in his mind it's kind of external because it's him and his parents, when in reality it's him stunting himself from being able to be happy. And I think it's just, this is, like, that's one of the reasons why I think this is, like, nearly a perfect Batman movie, is just that, like, we really have not seen many Batman portrayals where he's given that depth and had moments where he can really show that and break down and like you said, like, plead for his parents to let him pursue happiness.
I mean, this movie lets him, like I said, I talked about it earlier, I want to see a Batman that grows. I would like to see a Batman that gets to that happiness, and while he doesn't necessarily have that per se at the end of this movie is so good because in a 78-minute runtime, Bruce has two different arcs. He has his flashback arc of dealing with the confliction in his heart about whether or not he can keep his promise, or if he loves Andrea and wants to be with her, and then you have his arc in the present day of letting go of trying to help her, and also to an extent just letting go of what he can't control, I think. And that's something that the two timelines are interspersed so perfectly, so seamlessly. But it's really incredible what this movie can accomplish in terms of Bruce's arcs, plural, in terms of Andrea, in literally 78 minutes, an insanely short runtime.
It just shows, like, the mastery of, both, like, Bruce Timm and Paul Dini and all the other directors and writers. They just really care. They really care about, showing the best ever, like, portrayal of, the heroes they decide to, like, work on, like Batman and Superman. It's honestly so appreciated. Like, watching like all of, like, not all of the Bruce Timm movies, but like the Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, like, projects they made together, like the Batman animated series and the Justice League series. It's amazing. Like, all the characters are incredible. They're all in depth. They're all likable, and you just want to see the happiest you just want to see all of them be happy, basically.
All right, boys, I think it's time to wrap this boy up. So, what are your favorite things, your least favorite things, and would you recommend this grand movie?
Well, I guess my favorite thing would be Bruce and Andrea's relationship, because honestly, when they are together, it was like almost watching, like, an entirely different movie. They're really happy together, and you just get this like warm feeling that's just seeing Bruce happy and see Andrea happy. Like, honestly, you just wish that they can just, put aside their differences and just be together and just be happy, normal people. But ultimately they can't, and that's another thing. Like, it's just the tragedy of it all. It's just ultimately they can't, and even though they are both saddened by it, it is what is necessary. And there's nothing I really dislike. And yeah, I recommend this movie.
My favorite thing is that I just really admire the creative mind that the creative minds of this story that did something original. You know, they didn't just adapt any other Batman story or character. They made their own character. They made it relevant to Bruce as a character, and to do it so well that it becomes an iconic thing that, like, you can't have a conversation about Batman and Batman movies without thinking about this. Like, it's become such an iconic part of the Batman character, and I think that them doing something original when there was already such a wealth of Batman stories is very admirable, in my opinion. My least favorite thing is, it's very nitpicky, but like we mentioned earlier, I think just seeing a little bit more of Phantasm in action would have been cool, but even that is a very minor complaint, and I would absolutely recommend this movie. I love Batman very dearly. He's a very important character to me, and this movie, I think, really... I'm starting to get emotional right now, but this movie, I think, really shows the emotional spectrum that I think Batman as a character deserves, and it means a lot to me to see that.
I think in terms of saying anything negative about the movie, it's goddamn hard. In the interest of saying something, I mean, Andrea being the Phantasm in terms of being a reveal or a twist it's pretty obvious. But that said, I don't think that's really the point. Like, I mean, they do keep it under wraps and all, but in general, like, don't get me wrong, I love being shocked by something. I love a good twist and a reveal that I don't see coming. It's so much fun. But at the same time, a lot of those, oftentimes, it's rare that you get one that is both that and also emotionally resonant. And if I'm picking either or, I would much rather have something that I see coming a mile away like this, but is so emotionally resonant and is still a shock to the characters, and it's definitely a shock to Bruce. I would take that over an empty reveal in a heartbeat, and this is definitely not hollow.
I want to go rebuke that a little bit, as in, like, they don't really, like, conceal it that well, but yeah, it isn't the point. I think the point is that you don't want it to be her. You don't want it to, because it just, in the middle, it seems like they reconcile and they're going to be together again, and it just seems like, you know, they're going to pick up where they left off of just being happy together, and you just don't want her to be the Phantasm, because if she is, then they can't be together. And the eventual reveal of her being a Phantasm, although it's not surprising, is heartbreaking.
It's one of those things that Bruce, who is otherwise such a detective, I think is so distracted and blinded by his love for Andrea and his hope for that he falls for the obvious red herring of it being her father. Not even, like, you could sit there and be like a dick and be like, well, why doesn't he look into her like that her father's dead, but like, it's just, he's so, like you said, he doesn't want it to be, so you don't want it to be, even if you kind of know it is. And ultimately, my favorite thing about this movie is actually going to be, like, the setting of it and the sets of it. Sean talked about it. You guys talked about it earlier. It may be a little on the nose, but, like, the World's Fair and the whole World of Tomorrow setting, but that, like, idealizes domesticity, that he feels that they were so close to, but ultimately literally on a track that pulls them away from it in the end, to then seeing it dilapidated and run down, and then ultimately, with the realization that he can't save Andrea, it blowing up entirely and no longer being present at all. I think that seeps into the look of Gotham with its huge curved architecture, in a way that almost mirrors the size and shape, I think, of characters like the Phantasm and like Batman, that look like they belong on those buildings, and this huge, almost futuristic, promising look, and there's, like, these cars, but also it's so dimly lit that it also kind of emphasizes this false promise, the false promise of love, of happiness, of a lot of things you could say. Potentially Bruce really having a false promise that he can never truly fulfill, like, that he can never truly stop crime and totally fulfill what his parents want, especially since he doesn't really know. They died when he was young. Alfred says it at the end of the movie, like, talking about the line that he walks, of, you know, staring over the abyss at vengeance, as it pans out and you see the Batcave as this visual representation of the cliff that this man is on every day, where he gets to be kind of have the mask off and the suit on and get to be both parts that make him who he is, as we talked about earlier. The sets of when he's with Andrea and it's the only time that it's daytime out and you see like the wide open backyard of the mansion and everything's open and clear and light and happy. It just all is used so perfectly, even if it can be on the nose. It's so wonderful. It's got to be my favorite element of the movie. Of course, I recommend, I mean, if you've been listening for the last 60 to 90 minutes, like, fucking, of course, I recommend this. I recommend Batman the Animated Series as a whole. I recommend the DCAU as a whole. A lot of that, I mean, there's some stuff here and there maybe that's spotty, but as a general, it's worth watching through. And at the very least, watch Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, and there's not really much I can add to any of this conversation at this point, but like, yeah, I'd have to say that like my favorite thing out of anything in this movie is just the art style, the art design, the backgrounds, everything being so masterfully created and it meshing so well together to create this its genuine own style that so many people can look back on and associate with it. That I really feel it just adds to the timelessness and just this movie and it being like, you know, considered one of the quintessential adaptions of Batman, that it's such a there's nothing that I can really compare it to. Least favorite thing, I know Jason already talked about this, but it's just that like it's not even anything that's even bad. It's just I would have liked more Phantasm. That's nothing that they did wrong. They didn't do anything wrong. I just would have liked more Phantasm. And would I recommend? Yes, 100%. So yeah, we've got all of our opinions in. Matt has one more thing.
I just want to say that if you made it this far, first, congratulations for making it this far.
Second, reevaluate your life choices.
Well, you know, at this point, I'm not sure they have many. But thank you very much for listening. If you did enjoy this movie, you should watch the other animated Bruce Timm projects, such as, well, of course, the Batman animated series, seasons 1 through 4. 4 is a bit of a whiplash because of the artistic change, but still very good. Then you should move on to the Justice League series.
Hey, don't leave out Superman the Animated Series.
Oh,
or Static Shock.
Oh, very true. So there's a few of them I forgot. Thank you, Jake, so much. So there's also Batman the Animated Series. Very much unappreciated. It's still very, very good. And if you're not a Superman geek, you know, Batman does make occasional appearances there. So I hope that makes you happy. Static Shock, incredible show. And of course, I mentioned Justice League and its sequel series, Justice League Unlimited, and my personal favorite, Batman Beyond. It should go without saying. You've probably heard of it already. Go watch it, please.
Jeez, he's so passionate. I respect it.
All right, so I'll give us our little outro. So we'd like to give a thank you to at Vodmort for our art. Did you ever ask how he pronounces that?
No, I still have not confirmed with Alo how we say his at, but it's VODMORTE.
Very talented.
And I will also plug Jake's letterbox at JakeWalter98, where you can see all of his beautiful, beautiful movie reviews. And then Jason, if you'd like to include your things while you are still naked.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is gonna be my first time doing a plug while shirtless. I make music.
Well, a plug on the podcast, that is.
Oh, butt plugs. Big fan. Anyway, I make music. I made the outro music for this podcast. If you've made it this far, you've already heard it. And it's from a song called Pins and Needles that I'm working very hard on. From an EP I'm making called Cult Classic. That'll be out whenever it's out.
You'll plug it.
I'd appreciate it if anyone listened. I make music under the name The Upsides, the _ Upsides PA on Twitter, The Upsides PA on Instagram. You can find me on SoundCloud, just The Upsides.
There we go. All right. If you are interested in continuing to check us out, you can follow us at Illiterate Pod on both Twitter and Instagram. You can
It's Illiterate _pod.
fuck off.
Okay, the underscore is important for them to find us.
Okay. At Illiterate _pod on both Twitter and Instagram. We post many things on both of them.
Do we?
You can also reach us at culturallyilliteratepod@gmail.com, and all episodes will be on YouTube as well as on our Culturally Illiterate podcast channel. We will be back next episode to talk about Batman Forever. Really getting a string of Batman. I'm loving it.